This is number 7?
Jesus.
Number 7 of the messy middle. So we've been doing this for 7 weeks. Did
We
you
have
know?
consistency.
Yeah, consistency. Yeah. 7 is my lucky number.
That's good.
Yeah, well, as my former co-founders used to say, not the ones in the SPAC and Gamma, they said, well, 7 and 21, yes, they're both your lucky numbers. Like, but they're everybody's lucky number. They're like, there's
In Asia,
nothing.
it's 8.
It's 8. It could be 13 as well.
And 88 also, I think. Yeah.
You guys have lucky numbers? Do you believe in lucky
I
numbers?
have 11.
Why 11?
Well, I like 137 for a different reason, but it's definitely not a lucky number. But I keep seeing it everywhere for some.
So like on the 137th page of The Great Gatsby, you fell in love with 137 because it was talking about Daisy Buchanan. Did you read The Great Gatsby, guys?
Yeah,
Oh.
I did.
You
I
have
didn't
not
like
read The
it.
Great... That's because I won't say anything against.
I prefer
I won't say anything against. I won't say anything against. You know the
No.
the fact that you weren't brought up in America reading The Great Gatsby.
I prefer Catcher in the Rye, definitely.
Holden Caulfield.
Yeah.
Did you ever read Catcher in the Rye, Teddy?
Nope, not familiar.
These are iconic American books to understand sort of the American psyche.
What's the name of it again?
Tom Sawyer. Anyway,
Tom Sawyer
American literature.
Catcher in the Rye.
Mm-hmm.
And it there's an incredible documentary on the writer. Why am I forgetting his name? Holden Caulfield's obviously the main character, but what's the writer's name?
Salinger.
Franck.
Salinger.
J.D. Salinger. Yeah. That's I don't think this is his real name, but
it's okay. You can rewind the video and look at the name I said. Probably, I guess, like 1 minute ago, but indeed.
Did you say Salinger?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Sorry,
exactly what I said.
I guess I forgot that. Okay, so this week we're talking about networking. We can
sounds
talk
like
a little
not
bit about,
working.
Yeah. Maybe if you replace it with an O, with the E, it's not working. I can tell you I like to network, but we've got networking as our overarching theme. And I think we should get into some updates in our lives and our startups. We could talk about the fun AI regulation that seems like Europe is incredible with regulation. I don't know about anything else.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, food,
Number
fashion. And we'll close out with a quote from me, is what I'm told. So, Teddy, what's up? What's the latest in Nueva York? I see the Christmas tree there.
Yeah, we put a Christmas tree. Was mostly cooking stuff at home, trying to get into the, I don't know, holiday Christmas spirit. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Mostly working and resisting the urge to work on new things. That was my last week. Spent it just trying to focus on 2-3 things max. Nothing
We're
really
still
exciting.
Unclear of what you're actually working on.
I have pretty clear direction with one of those things. So, yeah. And I've shared privately. I mean, we talked with Franck, and I'm sure we talked at one point, Gabriel. If not, we will for sure. But yeah, it's still too early to.
I think we have it on the calendar. We're going to dinner. We're going to dinner on the 21st. So,
yeah.
But at some point, it'll be fun to reveal what's happening in the background.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Franck, what's going on in Estonia?
Well, beside a lot of snow, and I forgot to say that I'm also co-running a AI meetup in Estonia, and I don't know, the community really starts to grow. Like, it's pretty nice to see it coming. And,
how many people are coming
and growing and
to that? How many people are going?
So we kept it at 50 people, I think, and it's always full. So I guess we'll need to find a bigger venue. But it's always nice to see communities being born. Still very busy with electricity. It's an early stage company, and the goal right now is something you don't learn at school, which is how do you go from pure chaos to starting to structure, things and getting people to know what they're working on. I'm getting better at that, I guess, the more I do startups, like compared to how I used to make them like years ago. I think my lesson learned is years ago I would assume everybody can figure out stuff by themselves, and years later I realized that's a very rare skill to have people who know how to figure out stuff by themselves. So you need to give like clear directions, repeat things, blah blah. So it's nice. Like the team is really cool. People start to have beginning of a good dynamics together. So it means that gives me less work, and then it means now I can focus more on vision and things that are useful, I think, for a company and where I can give, and then also give me time to work on broader vision for other AI projects.
And have you seen now, because you are a seasoned entrepreneur, in sort of making the difference between the doing the work up front to educate and inform and getting the new hires onboarded properly? I'm assuming it's a stupid question, but like it actually does wonders, even though it's a pain in the ass to get everybody on the same page and say, okay, no, you do it this way, you do it that way. Have you seen, even with Massive and obviously Startup Weekend way before Recorp, you see with now Collectus that this is kind of your best training session yet for these new hires because of your experience?
No, I mean, we like the way I've learned to onboard is, I think the training session, it would come, nobody would like the training session, the process, all of that.
No,
it comes when you have less chaos.
I like it, because like normally a normal show, somebody would be like, yes, it's got to do it. You'd be like, no.
It's because of New York and France. I think it's just a natural thing. But it's you ask a question, and so to me the answer is, at least the way I do it, I would say if the company passed the 100 people mark, then you have a lot of process, and then your onboarding is very clear. Then you have like welcome documentation, like onboarding process, like clear stuff. When you're at the early stage, like your company mission might change, 1 week after another. The product is not stabilized and all of that. So I'm not doing the effort of structuring everything. I'm still somehow trying to find people who can survive. And so the way we hire people, and we did that, I think, pretty well also with Massive, is we just look for great talent on paper. And then the way we did it, we just tell people, okay, you have 1 month, to survive, and we just hire them right away. That process might have changed now, but the company is evolved. But at least I guess that's kind of the way I do is I just welcome people who are comfortable with the chaos, and then you just observe if people are swimming. And I guess with experience, you kind of develop an instinct for the people who are going to make it or not.
And I think I'm imagining that. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what I was going to say there, but I'm imagining that the questions that people ask, like, what they're going to ask in this process of during the hiring process, or like going through it, or no? Are you kind of like, that one's unique? Like, was there anything that stumped you? And then I'll get into my updates.
That's a good point. Yeah, and that's a good point. I guess the way I do it is I give minimum information, and then the people who can navigate the minimum information by asking the right questions, you kind of know it's like, somehow you're going to meet people, they're not going to ask anything. And then other time people are going to ask questions, and you're like, wow, these are all the right questions. These are everything we're talking about right now. And so you're like, that's a good way. If you give them minimum information, if people ask the right questions, I think that's that's a good sign.
Got it. Cool. So my updates on my end, I booked everything for my rest of my December travel, more personal side. So excited. I'll be in New York next week, a week from today. I get to take the Blade helicopter from JFK to Manhattan. It'll be my first time trying that, because I get, with my JetBlue Mosaic, JetBlue's not a sponsor, by the way. My Mosaic 4 status gives me the 4 free helicopter transfers. The crazy thing is it's got to go from the west side all the way to the east side. So they'll drop me off on the west side, and then I have to take a cab to my apartment. So it's actually going to be quicker it'll be quicker taking a helicopter there, and then it'll take much longer to go from the west side to my apartment than I would if I just took a car from JFK to my apartment. But whatever. I guess I've never flown on a helicopter before, so I'm looking forward to that. And business wise, still in this messy middle period of figuring out what the hell I'm gonna do. Deciding, do I go all in AI and go to California and become an AI disciple and follow Sam Altman and Elon Musk and crew, which would be fine. Or do I do a turnaround? And having lots of conversations with private equity guys and doing research on that. And of course, it's nearing the end of the year, so there's not a lot that's going to be happening business-wise. So I'm doing a hell of a lot more research now, and I'm doing some networking. So why do you guys hate networking so much? You were telling me last week, Frank, you're like, I hate networking. Teddy, you were saying it's not working. Why is it not working, Teddy?
Yeah, I always feel it's waste of time for me. I'm a type of person that wants to just sit and work and build things. I guess it depends on the person, but on the other side, a lot of relationships from the past are basically me going somewhere totally random and meeting people. So for that thing, I appreciate networking, but I have to have something to network with. I have to have a thing that I'm working on. If I'm just going there and exploring, and I think we mentioned it in some of the previous episodes, that if you just go and say, maybe you, Gabriel, mentioned that, like, you don't work on anything at the moment, like people just like turn sideways in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that many times. If I don't have anything to share, it's not gonna work. But as soon as I have something ready, as soon as I have a product or demo or things that I really want to get out of the networking, I like it. I can do it. Yeah. Before that, I just don't feel confident.
Frank,
Yeah.
give me a little bit of why you don't like networking, or should we box this into different areas? What networking actually is?
No, I will explain myself. First of all, and of course, as usual, Gabriel is putting words in my mouth. I never said I hate networking. I said I don't like networkers. But I know it's fine. But it's like I don't like networkers. I don't like people who are milking networks with a purpose.
Yes.
Because it's like, I was giving an example, like to me, a typical one is a person you haven't heard of for the past 7 years. And somehow it's going to be like, hey, Gabriel, how are you doing? Oh my God, I'm doing this thing right now. Like, could you introduce me to Warren Buffett? And it's like these are the type of thing I don't like. I think, what's networking? Like, if you think of networking, to me, it's the idea of building your social capital. And so I think of it as like, you have social capital, and your social capital can go up or can go down. And to me, I think I don't like even thinking in terms of networking. Like, networking, I guess, is like, this analogy of the number of 6 degrees, blah, blah. I like to think of it as making friends. I guess actually it's like Warren's old book, how to make friends and influence people. Although I'm still awful at remembering first names. But I'm really more excited about, at a personal level, about being like, oh my God, I would love to talk to that person, like an amazing researcher, an amazing developer, an amazing business person. And I try to just do it if it also makes sense for him, So it's like, I want to talk to you because I've got a sense that we're going to have a great conversation and that we should be connected and it's going to be great, which is very different from, I want to talk to you because I need you to achieve something and I don't give a shit about you. And that to me, sometimes can be also networking.
Well, okay. So then let me clarify. From a social capital standpoint, you enjoy networking, connecting with people to have a friendly social experience that's actually a cool experience versus, I mean, we all know the type of the person that rolls in and is like, look,
yeah,
it was great to connect through so and so, and I want this from you for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't heard from them forever. And they have no idea. They have no like conception that that's what they're doing.
No, and I would say, as you get older, I don't think your network. I think you get to a point where you de-network, which is you cut the branch out of your network that has low value, that are people that have been proven inconsistent, people who don't bring value to you. I think you're at that. I think there's a phase between your 20s and your 30s where you build your social network, and then you start to work with people, and then you learn from them. And I feel like fostering the good network, like getting like the strong connection, like I don't think you can keep building new branches, but I think it's nice to cut the bad ones. And to me, that's part of networking, right? It's part of enriching your social capital. You don't want to surround yourself by people with bad reputations.
And how do we feel when we're cut from people's networks?
I mean, I feel good. Usually it's me who cut them, or, then they're assholes, like, then fuck them.
But is there like a silent cut where like you don't know they've cut you, and then you reach out and you're like, why wasn't I invited to this event? Like I've had that experience.
No, you're right. Then screw them. Then they hate you anyway.
So let me comment on this and bring a little bit of context to our messy middle, because contextually we're in this messy middle time period of figuring out things and probably expand a little bit more. But I think when you're networking and figuring out what you want to work on next, or even if you're in the middle of a project that is your next thing, but you don't know if it's what you want to work on, I'd be really careful who you reach out to, because those people could make the decision for you sometimes if you're like kind of on the fence of things, or they also could influence you both positively and negatively. But if it's positively, that could be a good thing. It could also be a bad thing. They could say, keep going, because they have survivorship bias. So like my experience, even during this messy middles, I've been talking to a lot of these post-exit founders that have sold their businesses and made a lot of money. And the challenge with talking to them is they kind of live on a different planet than us, or at least if you're other entrepreneurs, because they've made whatever, 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars. Their next thing isn't based on, okay, figuring out how to make money. It's figuring out what they want to do with their lives next without the financial component coming into it. And why I'm being careful of that type of networking is I want to make sure that I'm 100% eyes wide open when I go into these conversations and aware of the context that I'm in with these people, so that I don't walk away saying, well, they're saying I'm going to be fine, which is true. I'm going to be fine. We're all going to be fine. But they've already hit that one level of what I'm looking for. So I try to do the networking approach, and this is purely in the context of the messy middle, is having kind of a diverse group of people to chat with. So like obviously us as our friends, and it's nice to talk to some other startup founders that are working on, that are in the similar vein of trying to quote unquote make it. But I try not to do too much of that, because then it's a little depressing, because they're all like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then I mix it with other individuals. And it's kind of a splattered approach. If I think the person's cool and it's fun to talk to, I'll go reach out to them, regardless if they're in the fintech arena or space. And I've always been pretty aggressive with my networking approach and aggressive not meaning like aggressive in like hey, let's talk now, but I've been pretty focused and deliberate in connecting with people, because I have a method of how I do it. Like I like to structure the email properly, or if I have their WhatsApp, I want to have a message, they actually respond and we have a good conversation, which I think is really important too, because a lot of people like to network and they connect on LinkedIn and they go, hey Frank, would love to talk about this. Can you help me with my startup? And you're like, no.
Yeah, what you just said, Gabriel, I think it really makes sense. If probably there are different types of networking. The way you explain it, where you strategically think about it, how you approach a certain person, you craft the email, you maybe learn a few things, and maybe you provide something upfront as a value. That's different. That I like. But just going, when I think about networking, the first thing that comes to mind is just social gathering, where you just go and random after work thing, you get a couple drinks, you talk to people, and that type of networking, I don't like it. But as soon as there's value, definitely makes sense. And also from a perspective of how do you call that, like a silent networking. Like in background, you always help people, you always provide value. So you're not that person that disappears for 7 years, but you're just there whenever some connections make sense. That's really the networking. That's I mean, that probably there is different word for that. I guess.
What about the Naval quote where he like I mean, Frank, you love to type while we're doing the podcast, but what's the Naval quote where he talks about networking, where he's like, networking is kind of bullshit. You just need to build. He goes, you got to build a great product, and that's all that matters.
He says networking is overrated. Become first and foremost a person of value, and the network will be available whenever you need it. I agree with that.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that.
In a way, I feel like networking, again, you can define it differently. To me, networking is this idea of increasing your social capital. And I guess you have inbound networking and outbound networking, and the one you want is inbound, where people reach out to you and say, oh my God, Gabriel, I heard of you, or Teddy, like what you do is amazing. The outbound is fine. You have to do it. That's part of the hustling. But first of all, I wouldn't do it when you're in the messy middle, because you're just talking to people for no reason, and that might not sound a good, unless it's people I guess that's fine. That you
or
you can
they're
manage,
in the messy middle too, or if they're also in the messy middle.
Yeah,
but even if you're upfront with like, I'm in a messy middle, I'm trying to explore, I want to meet you and learn about this space, whatever the space is.
Don't be like, hey,
doesn't
work.
Bad.
Hey, can I
doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I don't want to waste your time, basically.
Yeah, it's like, hey, hey Teddy, I'm thinking about doing AI and mobile apps. Like, can I talk to you for 2 hours? I don't know.
So that type of inbound sucks. Yeah. I've had many conversations.
Then you have work and there's no value, no hope of any value of any sort.
Okay, but I reached out to a guy like 2 months ago who and Frank, I want you to finish your thought. I reached out to a guy 2 months ago, Bob Pittman, who was the former the guy who created MTV, and he turned around like 3 or 4 businesses, including AOL. And I was like, I want to know about turnarounds. Can you tell me your story? I'm making a decision. Do I do AI or do I do a turnaround? So that was extremely specific, and he just spent the whole phone call telling me what he did, versus me being like, can you walk me through my decision process? Totally.
So actually, you give me something I wanted to talk about. Like, so let's put on the side the negative, and I'm going to tell you how I do networking on my end, and I'm super excited about it because it's so easy. But I'm contacting people that no one talks to, which I believe have a lot of value. I was reflecting right now because of Messy Middle, the conversation my former co-founder Clint, and it's been a while. I'm trying to crack, how to recycle founders, blah blah AI startup weekend.
We gotta get Clint on the show. We gotta get.
We should get him. But yes, you guys get to know him. But the thing I was reflecting on is like, okay, I want to build whatever some AI next generation startup weekend pre-YC. Let's say that's the general idea. And then I was like, what would I do? Like, okay, I need the best people in the world. And who are the best people in the world in AI in terms of execution? They're researchers. And then I look at the paper, and all the papers have all the name of a researcher, which I can swear, I'm sure if I send an email to any of them randomly, and I say, hey, read your paper, love your work, can we talk? 100%, whoever it is who works at Google, at OpenAI, blah, 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 like, holy shit, like someone noticed. And most people usually they try to network with, I don't know, whoever is an influencer of YouTube, which has on TikTok or whatever is trendy. And these have zero value. And so to me, I'm always amazed about also how much value there is in network that no one sees, and it's always exciting.
I 100% agree with you on that point, because I always it's a weird thing that I like to do. I like to go into the FT, and when I see something's gone wrong somewhere, like a guy lost all his money because he did a bad bet, or they fired this guy for, I don't know, something.
Oh, network. It's interesting. You're a network vulture. Hi. I say you crashed everything. I want to be a friend. You need some friends?
Okay, but I'm telling you, they have the best stories, because what am I going to do? Reach out to Elon Musk and be like, Elon, yo, I have like nowhere near the IQ of you. Can we talk about physics? And he'd be like, no, bro. Like, I did that 2 or 3 times with guys, and the stories are wild. and they tell you a lot of things that you would never hear even in the articles. But I think it rides a little bit to your point of look at who are the researchers on these AI papers, or you spend a little, and also there's like these. But I want to give like a little bit of a like a fun challenge. Like if you want to find somebody and not freak them out, but sometimes it's also worth it to go meet these people in person and like kind of finagle your way in and become friends with them. Yeah, that's how Frank became friends with me. Is he no, I'm kidding.
We met multiple times, and
he doesn't remember me.
It was destiny. But that's something else. I don't know if you guys have this issue, by the way, which is...
I met Frank at his peak. I met Frank at his peak for Startup Weekend. And he was like, yeah, Startup Weekend every day. And then I met him after Startup Weekend. And that's when he remembered me. So that just goes to show you, you know...
Yeah. Network vulture. Frank.
Was he hard to get, Frank?
But, no, but by the way, is that something that happens to you guys? Like, which is... It's really hard when you see too many people at one point, like to manage that net. Like, what's the number? Is it 70 people you can really manage?
Dunbar,
in your brain?
It's 150.
Oh, 150, okay. So that's it. So it's like, yeah. I feel like once you know what you're doing, it's easy. You know, you need to fit these 150 connections with people who are good for your business. But also, again, I would always keep friends. And to me, by the way, the messy middle is great for a network because whoever is left and still talks to you and is exciting and is helping you, that's like your stronger branches. You know, and you want to remember that because like these are the ones that will be there when everything's awful. Because as soon as you're successful, your network, everybody will be like, oh my God, Gabriel, like, oh yeah, sure, I'll help you. You know,
I'll tell you when I launched.
So that's another thing is like when it's the messy middle, like, you know, your branches that are still there, these are the ones you really want to remember and keep.
I remember this like vividly. Like when I launched a SPAC or I was working on the SPAC, so many people came out of the woodworks because they knew like I raised like $15 million, and they're like, "Oh, I want to help advise on this. I want to help advise on that. And I was like, I'm pretty certain I haven't heard from you in like 10 years. And you take the call because you want to be genuine and generous sometimes, but then after a while you're like, no, like I can confidently say, you know, obviously the three of us were there for each other during this time period. And I agree with Frank. Once you figure it out, it's not hard to network.
No,
like
and I'll pass it.
It's a graph. It's like literally like,
I'll pass it.
Like, no, it's an X. Yeah. Pass it to Teddy.
I'll pass it to Teddy, but before that, I just wanted to add when you gave the example of someone who made a $40 million exit, I think the issue of being in a messy middle with money is you attract all the wrong people. And so I think I see friends who just end up isolating completely because they're tired of, you know, people like contacting them because of the money. And so it's actually, I think it's easier to manage your network when you don't have cash. Like things are easier, you know, it's like your things are clear, you know what to do. I think when you have cash, you're at high risk of failing because attracting the wrong people, and it's easy to execute on any stupid ideas. You don't have like that luxury if you're constrained.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a luxury of time that they have, time and money, because money buys you time.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we said time is all relative, but I'm looking at these post-exit founders. Some of these guys, they didn't start something for 4 or 5 years later. And you're like, what did they start? They started like a cotton candy business or something. I don't know. Something. You're like, oh, I just like cotton candy. Teddy, what's up?
Just wanted to say a few things about that. No, I'm reflecting as we talk about this. The inbound networking, it's interesting you said that, Frank. But it's also energy draining because if you're getting so much of these requests from people, for example, in the past, people would reach out and look for a technical co-founder, and I was that person. So many people would come up with either bullshit ideas or they don't have anything to contribute with, but they just like to work with you. So that's also hard to filter through those people if you have a lot of inbound type of networking. And then another point is the worst type of networking. For me, it's what you, Gabriel, mentioned, like you don't go to the Elons or Sam Altmans of the world, but you just strategically approach them. And then if you have a conference and there's Elon Musk and you go there just to become like Elon, that's the wrong way to do it, right?
I'm imagining Gabriel on the dance floor and Elon is like, oh, hi, Elon. Oh, what are you doing here?
Typically, you're not getting to those people. The right way to do it is to reach out strategically to like you. That's how you do it.
No, that's not how you do it. What I'm saying is you're right, Teddy. You're right. That's not how you don't go to the conference to meet them because everybody's going to the conference.
Yeah.
I can tell you my Elon story how I met him.
You stoked him outside of his home for 1 week.
No.
I'm kidding him.
He doesn't own a home. Teddy, finished up.
True.
Because I have
no, but typically, if you want to become like, if you want to become like Elon or whoever other person, if that's and you're networking for the purpose of being that person, that's the wrong way. The right way would be to see what they do instead of going to them. Just the type of work they do. Elon, for example, does a lot of actual work, not a lot of networking. So you probably need to do that instead of going to meet Elon and ask random questions.
This is where I think it's important to realize your skills, who you are, what you bring to the table when you're networking. Is I've never been in the position where people come to me to network and say, "Hey, I want you to be my technical co-founder." Obviously, because I don't know anything about engineering, other than like I can fake it when I go pitch a VC. I'm like, yeah, don't worry, we're building in MySQL, do this, blah blah blah, this, and they go, "Oh wow." So, but I've never had that experience. How do you even filter that? Like, it's like, I know I've had the experience of asking somebody to be my technical co-founder, but normally it's because it's like they're like a soap in the shower. I've kind of like, I've used it so much that they're finally ready to say, yes, I will come and soothe you and be your technical co-founder. But
I just want to step in on that one. Like the way I manage the inbound, I'll tell you why, is I say yes to everybody. And I think for 3 reasons. Number one is because I don't want to be the guy who's just like, anyone who comes to me, I'm like, I'm too good to talk to you or something like that.
Yeah.
Number 2 is because one day I sent a message to Steve Wozniak, and every time I messaged Steve Wozniak, he always replied to me. And I was like, holy shit. Like if Steve replies to me, if all these people like who I know are very busy always reply, I'm like, I want to be that guy who always reply. And also I still have in mind the beautiful story of Steve Jobs when he was a kid and he called the CEO of Hewlett Packard and he replied. And so to me, my lesson learned from that story is I want to be that guy. Like, sure, I might say no to you if you contact me and I say that's a dumb idea, or I'm sorry, cannot do that, or I don't have the time to do that. I'm okay saying no. But I think that's some of the way I got my best network is because I was there when no one else was there for you. And it's kind of what you want people to be for you too. And so I feel like, if you have to be coherent, you have to make the effort and to be like, look, I'm busy, cannot talk now, maybe I can talk in 2 weeks, like whatever, send an invite you. You just put all the work on the person who reach out, but if they make the effort, I would, even if it's just a 20-minute call, I always make it.
Exactly, yeah. That's the way how I handle those. I handle those inbound people looking for a CTO. I'll give them a chance. Maybe they don't know how to explain the idea in the right way. Maybe they don't have blah blah blah. I cannot judge them on a first date. So basically, there's this period where I'm like, okay, let's see what they have to offer. How much do they really trust this thing, or there are people that would just find you and then they think that you're gonna do the work for them. So just give it some time. Say yes. See how it feels. You don't have to put a lot of work into that.
Okay.
As Frank, as you said, you just be there for them.
Yeah, and for me, the way I handle the inbound is because obviously nobody asked me to be their technical co-founder. They have asked me, can you help me raise money? Can you do this? Can you do that? I say, sure, let's have a conversation. I have a rule where I don't raise money for anybody.
Here's my price.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's pretty clear. Like we obviously know the story of that contract where that guy reached out to me. It was the first time I ever had an inbound request to be an advisor or to be paid. Yeah. Most of the time it's like, can you come and help me with this? And I take the call, and I'm pretty upfront, and I say, look, I don't raise money, but I give them advice.
Yeah, and again, that's my strategy. Other people have other strategy. Danielle Morrill, who was doing the CMO of Twilio for a while, and then a bunch of other startups after. I remember she tweeted, that she considered her time being worth whatever, like $10,000 an hour, and so she basically like see herself as that's the value of my time because my time is very precious, and so she kind of shields herself from anything else. And I think there's two again, like it depends on how much inbound you get, and so some people I think end up closing their network like that because they don't need network. Again, on my end, I even if my time is worth $100,000, I always try to keep time to, again, like freaking CEO of Hewlett Packard. It's like who am I to not? And I would love one day, like a 14 years old kid who calls you and say, "Do you have any electronic parts?" I'll be like, "Yeah, sure, little Steve. Just give me 1% in your next startup."
I will tell you that a lot of the people that we think are unreachable are pretty reachable as long as you're not asking for something unreasonable. And I told you I heard back from Sam Altman wishing him well with everything. I've heard, the CEO of Take-Two, when GTA, the trailer came out last week, I messaged him and he texted me back only like 20 minutes later saying, "Thank you so much. Have a great holiday season." That's a text message, right? Richard Branson, usually it's his assistant that probably emails back, but it's like they get back to you. So I think a lesson, for our messy middle subscribers, which there might be 7 of them now. How many do we have? 5, 6, 7? We're gonna have a party when there's 10 guys. Is treat people how you would want to be treated. Like if they're reaching out to you and you're reaching out to them, don't be the guy that's the 7-year networker. That's like,
exactly.
Because then they'll treat you like that.
And if I can illustrate that, because I just remembered a story about a friend of mine, which I haven't seen in a while, but always a place. He's a really cool guy. His name is Alex Banayan, and he wrote a book that's called The Third Door, which ended up like selling very well. And he basically interviewed like billionaires and asked them. And he asked them, what would you do when you were in your 20s? I met him. He was hustling outside of TED, and it was like, "Hi, Frank, I'm trying to write this book. Like, would you make any introduction?" I'm like, look, I can't really help, but I've got, our chairman of the board is Steve Case. I can facilitate an intro. I'm, not promising anything. And then he ended up interviewing, Steve. He ended up finishing his book, and I'm quoted in the book, and it's super cool. Like, so karma's real.
It's true. and I think it's important to make sure you give back and be good in this process, because it's also a small world that we're in, this world of tech, and let's say all the subsects, everybody knows each other, and it goes around pretty fast if you're a good person or not, and if you're an operator, if you're an executor. So don't bullshit too much. Obviously, we have to bullshit to fake it till you make it, but
I mean, Google does it, and they made it for a long time. But you saw their last AI thing was like the bullshit, like it just never stops.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We never.
That was such a bad move. You see, that's a good illustration of what happened when you bullshit too much. Now everybody is like, maybe they'll make a great product, that's as good as GPT-4. But now everybody's just gonna remembering how much they under delivered.
Isn't that the second time they did that?
Oh yeah.
Is it confirmed that it's fake, the whole thing, or did they say
it's confirmed already that the video is not what happened? Like what happened is some photos and the chat. So it's already a stretch. After that, I'm sure it's great, and also the way they compared and they say we're better than GPT is by using 2 different notation systems. So yeah, it's bad.
Sad for Google.
Yeah.
So OpenAI is now the reigning champ again with Microsoft. For this week.
And we need to talk about Europe. Let's not forget about that. We still have
Yeah. So you being in Europe, Frank, and Teddy, you being from Europe, and me being a Europhile.
In Italiano.
Oh yes. So is Europe just like really good at regulation? Because they killed my last SPAC deal, because well, actually it was UK, not Europe. Damn, they Brexited, but. Regardless, what do you guys think about the regulation? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it actually, something that we should
like?
I've seen them. I looked at them. I tweeted about it. I hate regulation. I think it's stupid. And I'm even more shocked because when I listened to a bunch of I think it was the what's his name, the CEO of Apple,
Tim Apple.
Anyway,
it's Tim Cook.
huh?
Tim Cook.
Yeah, Tim
Apple. I'm
yeah.
saying Tim Cook.
Tim Apple. Tim Apple, like Elon, like a lot of these guys are saying, a lot of these guys are saying regulations are needed, but I'm pretty sure they say that because it benefits them. I think, if you're a young startup and you want to innovate, then regulations are not going to benefit you. And I'm very worried in general about, the government taking more and more interest into technology, because I think they've learned that they can get disrupted like that. And when you look at the European regulation, what they say is, oh, you cannot measure, for example, sentiment, or you cannot, for example, there's one about education that says education is identified as something very dangerous with AI. And I've followed the people who wrote the paper, like a lot of them studied like social science, economists, like they're very politically oriented. And I'm very pissed that people who didn't vote for get to choose the regulation for some sector which they have no clue of what it is, because no one knows what's going to happen. I prefer the US way, which is to listen and maybe adapt later, about what makes sense or doesn't make sense. But to me, the way I read the regulation right now is, if you want to change education, you cannot do that. If you want to improve security, you cannot do that. If you want to do anything that's in the between, you will have first to apply to the European Union sandbox, play with them, which adds paperwork, which adds regulation. So to me, my conclusion is fine. Let's see what the US will do. But I do hope at one point there's going to be a Switzerland of AI, where there's no regulation, and then I feel like that's where we'd move.
So like, what if it's Djibouti?
I would move there. But I believe like Switzerland might be the place. Iceland, I don't know, England. I think England would be would make a lot of sense.
They're trying. Yeah, the UK is really trying.
I think England could. With a long history of England like screwing Europe, I think that would be a smart move.
Yeah.
Like, hey, no regulations here. Feel welcome. So anyway, I'm pretty pissed, but I know for some reason, and that's the biggest mystery to me, is most people around me and people who are knowledgeable. So maybe I don't see something, they say it's a good thing. The only thing I see that was good is at least they somehow support open source model, but that came out of a push from that community. But at the end of the day, it's simple. It's like big corporation, they say we need more regulation. Open source guys, they say we need to allow open source. But the way I see it is, as a universal law of entrepreneurship, the more regulation, the less innovation.
It goes to all of our sort of entrepreneurial heavyweights that we've seen. Elon Musk being probably the most important one right now, which is showing why space in this is mostly in America, but why we're not competitive, and it's kind of nuts. The only other spacecraft that can get us to space is the Russian Soyuz, and sort of the reason why is because the U.S. didn't create anything because of regulation. Number one, of all the regulation of getting a spacecraft into outer space, and the lobbying efforts.
But the U.S. has a long history of curving the ball back. It's like we have regulation, but they can be broken if the public likes to.
It depends.
In Europe, you have a long history. I remember an early Netflix in France, which was shut down because it was illegal, to rent stuff digitally. And then after that, they're like, oh, now we welcome Netflix. And now it's like, how do we tax Netflix? Even my dad, I remember as a personal story, my dad, who was a pharmacist, at first he was selling medication with a credit card, and the government said you cannot sell, medication by, using credit. And later on these things. So it's always the same story. It's like we regulate first, then we lose the innovation, and then the next thing will be whatever US company, which might be French, by the way, like there could be French people moving there. How do we tax is the next step as regulation. Anyway, I'm just pissed.
So are those French AI companies like Poolside? Mistral's French, right? Like, are they going to now move here because of the regulation, you think? Or are they going to move some operations here?
They might think not, but again, like I'm very skeptical about the European ecosystem in general. No doubt France has amazing talent in AI. Like a lot of my friends are in there. Like really, really great talent. There's going to be a lot of money pulling these things, but I still believe, I might be wrong, but I'll make a bet, which is like 5-6 years from now, a lot of these companies will be negatively impacted by regulation, by taxation, by all these rules. I might be wrong, but I'd I'll make that bet. That's kind of what I think.
I mean, there's yet to be a $1 trillion company come out of Europe, and
it's going to be even worse when people will lose their job because of AI. Because I still believe that's another bet I'm making. Right? Everybody says it's going to be okay, but I mean, translation is coming really fast. Translation is coming really fast, and so I don't see why. Suddenly you can speak with brilliant Indian developers who cost a tenth of what your US developer would cost, and so. I don't see how this thing is not going to have a huge impact. Again, might be wrong, hard to predict the future, but my bet is big on job displacement because of AI. Everybody's going to move to Macedonia. Yeah.
Okay, so
Daniel, we're getting Europe,
so we're almost at time here. Teddy, any final thoughts on any of our comments, discussion points?
No, I wasn't really following with the EU regulation, so I don't have anything to share. I'm against regulation, so some for the form of regulation, but I think they without knowing too much about it, I think they haven't done a good job.
By the way, I'm okay with regulation. Picture. I'm okay with democratic regulation, not preemptive regulation.
Yeah. I find the regulation in Europe always to be extremely frustrating. And sometimes the regulation is really important. Like the healthcare regulation actually is.
Oh, yeah.
In a lot of cases. But because in the States, in the States, well, because the regulation of healthcare for the insurance company, I mean, it's free healthcare.
No, that's the same. I think the US is fucked up because of regulation. You would take off the FDA. I think people would be better.
Yes.
But But anyway, like the one thing I wanted to add as a joke, because I was talking to a friend, because my startup Electis, we're doing elections for like companies who are more than 11 people, is literally only exists because there's a French regulation. And so my friend was saying, like, Frank, how can you not like regulation and build a business with this? And I'm like, look, I'm like George Soros. I don't make the rule. That's what he said. I was like, if there's a rule that says I can make money with regulation, then fuck yeah, I'll do that. And then I'll take my cash and move it where there's no regulation to invest in innovation. But like, you can still be cynical and not liking regulation, but I'll work with them. I'll do whatever is smart.
Yeah. Cool. Quote time. That was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
I think this was fun. Okay. I have a Steve Jobs quote. When you have something that doesn't work out, a lot of times people's reaction is to get very protective about never wanting to fail, never wanting to fall on their face again. I think that's a big mistake because you never achieve what you want without falling on your face a few times in the process of getting there. I've tried not to be afraid to fail, and matter of fact, I failed quite a bit since leaving Apple. And this was post-Next, and it was only a few years, post-Apple during Next. So, even Steve Jobs is the big, everybody thinks is so amazing and incredible, and only had wins because they don't realize he was fired from Apple. A lot of people forget because they're too young, but I think the reason why he was successful was obviously getting fired from Apple and then all the failures after at Next and everything else. Wouldn't have let him back to Apple if he didn't do that.
That could be a good theme for next week, like how to be comfortable with failure, I guess. What's how did we experience failure? But I agree with his quote. It's always easier to talk about failure when you're sitting on a huge success.
I actually also think that too.
So, I wonder. It would be interesting to know when his quote came from. Was it a quote of him when he was like back as CEO of a high growth company, or was it a quote when he was like in the middle of deep shit?
I think it was when he was in the middle of deep shit.
So then that's even more powerful that he was aware of it.
Yeah. I think it was like 8 or 9 years later. So, I think he was like 38 or something. Nice. But let me make sure I double check that so it's not I'm totally off my rocker. But I don't actually think he was back at Apple yet. Because it says I failed quite a bit since leaving Apple. Doesn't say returning. So it's definitely before he went back to Apple. It's fun,
that sounds like a next quote. Yeah.
It's a next quote. and it's definitely, and I think it was like next and probably right before Pixar, or at the time that he just bought Pixar from George Lucas.
Have you guys ever used Next? Do you even know what it is?
I used Next back in the day. We're actually all using Next, because wasn't Next iOS? So, or not
What?
iOS. It's wasn't Next the Mac
it was an operating
system.
system.
Yeah, it was the Mac operating system.
No, it wasn't a Mac operating system. Next was a Unix operating system that was running on mini machines. I never used Next directly, but I used Window Maker and a bunch of Next ports that were on Linux. But anyway, so I was just curious.
There was a machine, and there's like a Seattle Museum of Computers where actually I used the Next machine. They still have one running. You've been there, right, Frank? Where they have the.
I crashed a machine there, and I met it was awesome. I met one of the guy who developed the first real-time operating system, and he used to be an early employee at Microsoft when they created Microsoft. This place was amazing, but they closed it when Paul Allen died, so I was very lucky to see it. And if any of you go to Mountain View, at least you should go to the computer museum. It's amazing.
Yeah. We're done? Is that it? Okay, we'll see you guys next week.
All right. We can stop, but we can stay. Let's stay 5 more minutes.
Yeah. Next week.
Yeah.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
No. Oh, yeah, sure.
I thought that was done.